introduce to you the man of the hour, Tony.
Take number 5. Hello and welcome to At the Gates. I am Tony, your host, and I'm outside of Gate 34 at Target Field in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The date is September 17th, 2015, and the competitors are the Minnesota Twins, who host the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Today's guests:
Paul Com.
And Greg Barish from New York.
From New York City, not just state, city. Double New York.
That's right.
New York. All right, so you are our first visitor to Target Field that is not a regular. And how does it feel?
Well, it feels really moist. Is that what you're going for? No, it's a nice looking place. I was kind of doing a lap around. It's got a nice feel to it. It kind of matches the neighborhood in terms of, the color of the ballpark with all the buildings around it, and it's got a nice little feel to it. I'm excited to get in there.
To get in there, I'm not going to even touch that. I could say that's what he said. And so, what really brings you to Target Field? Did you just want to cross it off the list?
Yeah, basically. My dad and I have been to 27 of the current 30 ballparks, and this will be the 28th. It's been a couple years since we've crossed the new one off the list, so it was about time to get out here. We'll do the other two next year, hopefully, and finish them off.
Sweet, yeah. I noticed that you were here back in 2009 for the end of the Metrodome, and unfortunately you didn't just knock it down when you left. We had to wait like another half year to finally get this stadium. So I know that you haven't been in there yet, so this might be more of a Paul and I question, but compared to the Dome, like, how is the stadium itself different? The fans, the ball hawking, what's different?
Well, I'm going to start with the fans, because there are actually people who show up to Target Field versus, the handful of people at the Metrodome. Otherwise, ball hawking, it's a lot tougher with seats, but I know with the Metrodome, it's pretty steep in the outfield too, so it's kind of similar there. You have more range. You can really go around the whole ballpark at Target Field, so that's a plus from the Metrodome. But obviously, like today, weather's a factor, and batting practice is out for today, and it might kind of put a limit on what we can do as ball hawks.
Yeah, that average of 15 or just under, that's, it's going to take a miracle, but if you do it, if you can maintain that average, you have a new stadium record.
That's true. Yeah. I was hoping to have 2 good games to kind of take a shot at breaking the record here. Doesn't look like I'll have 2 shots at it. Maybe 1 tomorrow. We'll see how it goes.
You get like 1 1/4 shots.
Yeah.
So, Paul, what is the best view in the stadium?
Right behind the home plate dugout.
Home plate dugout. That is where the umpires reside, I guess. No teams, just there's a home plate dugout. That's a new feature that I'm unaware of, and also one that is just not conventional in baseball at all.
Clarification here. Home plate side of the Twins dugout.
There it is.
I wholeheartedly disagree with your assessment. I'd say the best view would be actually on the other dugout where the Angels are going to be tonight, because then you can see this massive skyline that is Minneapolis. And I'm pretty sure, Greg, you're going to leave here, and when you go back to New York City, you're going to be like, what am I looking at? I'm looking at basically where ants live compared to Minneapolis. So, what's the best, give Greg some tips. What's the best seat or best section to ball hawk in?
Well, I'm looking at section 314 right now, which is the 3rd level, all the way behind home plate. A lot of foul balls go back there.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think Greg should be in there
He should
all
just
game.
go up to the very last row.
Yes,
last row.
Sounds good. I'm going to literally go up there and find an Easter egg and be like, you guys.
He probably would. Or you'd know like some player and he'd be like, oh yeah, Greg's on vacation, let's throw him a ball way up there, and then I'd be like, I quit.
Yeah.
I would just quit. And lastly, how about the worst feature that the stadium has to offer?
The right field plaza, because it's so high and it's so far away.
Yeah, and also it just gets so crowded out here that I don't think that you'd want to play this, because, I mean, it looks like there's a lot of room to run, but, you can't. I don't know one person who has gotten a home run ball out here. Thank you, Kenny Spargus. But yeah, you should probably definitely not play there. But if we're actually going to be serious, the worst feature, other than right now it being an open air stadium, would definitely be the fact that there's nothing in center field, and also there's not really a good way to get across from center field or from left field to right field and vice versa. Blows, but what can you do? That, and I'd also have to say maybe the overhang in left field. It snatches a lot of balls that should have probably gone into the left field first deck. All right. So this is for Greg because he has been basically everywhere, 27 of the 30. How about some quick differences in East Coast versus the Central versus the West Coast? Just same thing, like stadiums in general, fans, ball hawking.
Sure. There's a big difference between the New York ballparks as opposed to the rest of the East Coast ballparks, first of all. But yeah, in general, the East Coast ballparks are just tougher because the fans are always there early. They're always interested in getting autographs and trying to catch balls. You go out west to like Petco Park and you're the only person in the stands for the first hour. Totally different kind of thing. Obviously, that's not necessarily regional completely, but New York is pretty crazy. It's a tough place to ball hawk. I kind of have stayed away from there mostly and gone to Philly and DC a lot this year. Yeah, I would say.
That's kind of what it looks like also on my game balls. It seems like the further that you get away from New York, generally speaking, the easier it gets. And kind of like you said, it even goes to the fact that San Diego, the furthest place from New York, is probably one of the easiest. So it's just kind of one of those things where probably isn't by design, but it just happens because teams either suck or fans really, I mean, how long has San Diego had a team there? They're not as entrenched as like New York and even just East Coast in general. Also, let's stay in New York. How about the Mets and Cespedes fever? Can it be sustained?
I mean, no, nothing can be sustained like this. But it's awesome. It's been really fun to watch. If he keeps it up for another month and a half, maybe the Mets just go ahead and win the World Series.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think the Mets right now are for real?
Sure. Yeah, why not? There's no team that is really running away with the league at this point. The playoffs for anywhere are kind of a crapshoot. So sure, any team can win it.
And if it were to come down to like right now, if they were to play the World Series tomorrow, and it's Mets versus Yankees, who's going to win that series?
I think the Mets actually would win that series. They have a better pitching staff. They have a lineup that's producing much better right now. The Yankees are kind of a product of that little ballpark, and if the Mets were at home for 4 games, I feel like with their pitching staff, I think they'd win. You
heard it here. Greg Barish is going with the Mets to win the World Series no matter who they play, no matter what happens. If Cespedes blows up tomorrow because of massive diarrhea and it actually like makes him explode, they're still going to take it.
The World Series. That's what I said.
That's haha. We pinned that down. Can we just isolate that right now? Just say Mets will win the World Series no matter what.
The Mets are going to win the World Series no matter what.
Ha ha ha. And of course they're going to play the Twins because they're automatically making the World Series no matter what happens, because even if the Royals make it, they have to forfeit because of this really weird stipulation that puts the Minnesota Twins just into the World Series. They didn't make a deal with the Devil to win the World Series themselves, but they made a deal to just make it. So it's going to be pretty sweet.
So they're just going to get swept, though.
Well, hey, we made it. Compared to the last few seasons of 90 losses, meh. All right, and the last thing that I wanted to do, staying in New York, and I know that one of our fellow friends who is not here with us today, don't worry, he didn't die. I didn't mean that he's, rest in peace, Mateo. It's too bad you died. He used to live pretty close to a very iconic place in Seinfeld's lore.
Yep.
So sticking with the cafe there, and because Mateo isn't here and we love him so much, I'm gonna. Well, that's true. I mean, love is a strong word. It also is like a 4-letter word. And hate is also a 4-letter word, so basically love equals hate. We hate you, Mateo. Greg said, suck it. And he was pointing at something. I'm not going to tell you what, but he pointed at something. So basically what I did, and
he was pointing at that big, massive skyline.
Yeah, he pointed at his skyline. I went ahead and did this all on my own, and it's going to be pretty crappy. So if you want to disagree, you can. I basically took a look at the major or like funnier people in Seinfeld, and then tried to see who in Major League Baseball, whether they're a player, a coach, or owner, who would fit that character. And I'll start with Jerry. I did Brandon McCarthy just because he's smart. He's kind of has that everyman look too, which Jerry kind of had. Yeah, and he's tall. So I would say that he would also probably take that as very much of a compliment. Then for number 2, I had George, and I went with Zach Greinke if he could gain 50 pounds, because I know that Greinke's kind of quirky, has been known as being a head case. I just think that he has it in him to channel his inner George. I would love to just see him freak out on the mound and just say something very George. Number 3 would be Kramer, and I mean, it has to be Hunter Pence. He just looks like Kramer. Number 4, Elaine. While there isn't a woman baseball player, I went with someone who is very good at acting and very good at 90s clothing wearing. And I'm choosing the Zubaz Male Model of the Year, Trevor May, just because I'd like to see him have that role of a woman. Number 5, Newman, Pablo Sandoval, because people kind of hate him. He's chubby. He's just kind of Newman. Plus, I think that people from New York would hate him now that he's a Red Sox, just like they hated Newman. Number 6, Frank, a.k.a. George's dad, Jeffrey Loria, because, I mean, both of them would have a meltdown and just have a fire sale. Number 7, Putty. I went with A-Rod because he's kind of a douche and kind of thick-headed and just an idiot. Number 8, the last one here, is Uncle Leo, and I went with Cespedes because of the crazy eyebrows. And let me say that Josh Satin, is that how you pronounce it? Used to be with the Mets. If he would have still been in the league, he would have given Cespedes a run for his money because he also has some crazy eyebrows. But Cespedes, congratulations, you're Uncle Leo. Lastly, for entertainment-wise, are we going to be watching, or has anyone watched Farrell Takes the Field?
I have not.
No.
No one's watched it. Are you going to watch it?
I don't know what it is. I'm not gonna lie.
Not certain.
All right, it's Will Ferrell, that documentary.
Yeah.
And I mean, shout out to Nick Batters, who co-stars in it basically with his big glove. Pretty sweet. I will be watching it because I love Will Ferrell, not in a really creepy way. I save that love for Mateo. But, you know, I'll probably watch it. And lastly, let's take a look at one of the things that I think Mateo would probably yell at us about. It is a way to kind of take a look at stats and see if managers are doing a good job. And it's the Pythagorean win-loss estimate. And right now the Twins are actually lucky. They have outperformed what is expected. And that formula just kind of looks at runs scored versus runs allowed. Surprise here is that the Blue Jays are a -8, so they should have 8 more wins than what they do. And the Rangers are the luckiest at +7. Quick question, do we think that rating managers on that luck factor could you say that is manager related?
No, I don't think so. I'm kind of a sabermetrics guy. I think that it's very easy to figure out if a manager is good or not just by watching how he manages games.
I'm not familiar enough to speak on this wisely.
I love that answer. I think I'm going to be closer to Paul's answer here, but it's just kind of funny to look at and see who's having luck, who isn't, and really some of those blowout games can really skew that. I mean, if you lose 20-1, all of a sudden it's going to look like you should have won 2 more games. Just weird. All right, any of you guys coming up on any personal milestones? Ball hawking, that is?
I don't think so. Probably.
All right, so like 100th Jimmy John sandwich delivered to Target Field is out. Otherwise,
Damn it.
Otherwise, no.
Well, I'm coming up on 500 hopefully by the end of the season. If I get 18 today, which I mean I probably will, but I'm gonna let Greg do well here, so I'm gonna just stop it at 17. Yeah. How about Ball Hawk of the Year? Who do you have?
Myself. I don't know. Zach?
Either Greg or Zach.
I have Greg. I want to touch Greg right now, and I did. I poked him in the stomach, just like the Pillsbury Doughboy. He didn't go hoo-hoo. How about one person that probably won't gain a vote that you might not actually vote for, but that maybe deserves a little bit of like, hey, look at what they're doing?
Someone who will not get a vote
Yes.
from anybody? Or from
More
me?
than likely. Just more than likely won't get a vote, or very low.
Mateo, because he's real cute.
I'm going to go, since Mateo was brought up, I'm going to say Tony.
I'm going to go with who I'm going to see on Saturday, and that's Angel. He is out in Houston, and he has been doing very good stuff. He's at about, I think, 126 balls in 25 games. So doing well, although I just heard that he had his appendix removed. So he's going to be not really mobile when I see him, which would kind of suck. So that's the end of the podcast. This podcast is not, I repeat, not brought to you by Alternative Baking Company. The reason why I say that is because they make vegan cookies and they're delicious. They have either a double chocolate chip or a luscious lemon poppy seed that I devour. And it's also not brought to you by new albums by Craig Finn called Faith in the Future. He's a Twins fan. Dead Neanderthals Worship the Sun, which is Dutch heavy jazz. And the Anthropocene Extinction by Cattle Decapitation. And don't get worried, that is a death metal band that has lyrics about cruelty to animals, and they are very much anti-cruelty to animals. Also about pollution and global warming, so it's kind of one of the smart death metal bands out there. And if you want more, go to ploofsnewhairdo.mlblogs.com or atthegates.libsyn.com. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at The Gates Podcast and Instagram at The Gates Podcast. Thank you. Good night.